October 1954, Cottonwood, Arizona. A station wagon slowed on Main Street and pulled to the shoulder. The man behind the wheel had been in 100 westerns. He had played sheriffs and outlaws and cavalry officers and ranchers. He knew what a wrongful arrest looked like because he had played both sides of one. He sat with the engine off and watched the crowd outside the county jail. 20, maybe 25 people. The particular loose gathering of a small town that has decided something without being sure what. Then he got out. Nobody looked at him twice. They were too busy being certain about a man they had never bothered to know. This is the story of the man they were certain about. Ray Decker is 28 years old. He came home from Korea in March of 1952 with a Bronze Star, a piece of shrapnel in his left thigh that the Army surgeons decided was safer to leave than remove, and a name he could not get out of his head. The name was Bobby Carruthers. Bobby was from Tulsa. He had joined up the same week as Ray, trained at the same camp, shipped out on the same transport. He was 22 years old, and he could do a perfect imitation of a rooster that made the whole barracks laugh at 4 in the morning. At the chosen reservoir in November of 1950, the temperature dropped to 30 below. The ground was frozen solid. The weapons froze. The morphine froze in its vials. Bobby Carruthers died on a Tuesday in the second week of fighting, 6 feet from Ray, in a shallow trench that the frozen ground had refused to give up easily. Ray held his hand for 11 minutes before a sergeant pulled him back to the line. Ray came home. Bobby did not. This is not something Ray talks about. It is not something he has told Ed Harmon or the men at the feed store or anyone in Cottonwood. He carries it the way men carry things they have decided are too heavy to put down and too private to share. He carries it in the left side of his chest, not the right, which is where his country told him to put his Bronze Star. He went to work on Ed Harmon's ranch 6 miles east of Cottonwood in the summer of 1952. Ed Harmon is 61 years old. A direct man who pays on time and asks no questions. He hired Ray on a Thursday afternoon after a 3-minute conversation in which Ray said he could work cattle and mend fence and fix most engines, and Ed said that would do. That was the whole interview. Ray has been working the Harmon Ranch for 2 years. He is the first one at the barn in the morning and the last one to leave. He does not cut corners. He does not ask for advances. He saves $15 a month in a coffee tin behind his bunk, which he tells no one about. The coffee tin is for the land. Wallace Decker, Ray's father, had 40 acres on the east side of the Verde Valley. He homesteaded it in 1921, built a cabin on it, ran a small cattle operation until his heart gave out in 1948. On his deathbed, he held Ray's hand and said 3 words, "Son, that's yours." Ray was 22 years old and had his draft notice in his pocket, and Korea had not started yet, but it was coming, and both of them could feel it. Ray squeezed his father's hand and said, "Yes, sir." He has been trying to get back to those 40 acres ever since. The problem is Walt Puit. Walter Puit is 44 years old and owns the Verde Valley Land and Cattle Company, which is less a company than a method of acquiring things other people have built. He has been buying up Verde Valley parcels for 6 years, one at a time, at prices that look fair on paper and feel wrong in the hand. He came to Ray in the spring of 1953 with an offer for the 40 acres, $800, which was $200 below market and $600 below what Ray's father had put into the place. Ray said no. Pruitt smiled the smile of a man who is not accustomed to the word and said he understood and that the offer would stand. He shook Ray's hand and drove away in his black Ford. Ray watched him go and felt something he could not name exactly. Not fear, not anger, something between the two that sat in the stomach and did not move. He went back to work. Please press the hype button on your phone to support my videos and me. 3 weeks before the bank robbery, Walt Puit came back. He had a different number this time, $600, lower than before. He explained that the market had softened and that he was doing Ray a favor by offering anything at all given the condition of the improvements. Ray looked at him for a long moment. He said, "My father didn't sell it to you and neither will I." Pruitt's smile did not change, but something behind it did. He folded his papers back into his briefcase and said he was sorry to hear that, and that Ray should think it over. He shook Ray's hand again. His grip was different this time, harder, longer, the grip of a man making a point without words. He drove away. Ray watched him go. He did not tell Ed about this visit. He told no one. What Ray did not know, what no one in Cottonwood knew, was that Walt Puit had a problem. The Verde Valley Land and Cattle Company had borrowed heavily from a Phoenix bank to acquire 6 parcels in the last 2 years. The 7th parcel, the Decker 40 acres, sat in the middle of his holdings like a gap in a fence. Without it, his portfolio had a hole that the bank had noticed and was asking questions about. He needed that land. He needed it by the end of the year. He had tried money. That had not worked. He needed another way. Frank Dolan is 37 years old and has been the deputy sheriff of Yavapai County for 4 years. He is a quiet man who does his job correctly and keeps to himself. He grew up in Prescott. He has a wife named Clara and 2 daughters in grade school. He coaches Little League on Saturday mornings. He also owes Walt Puit $1,400, borrowed in the spring of 1953 when Clara's mother was sick, and the medical bills came faster than the deputy's salary could cover. Puit had offered the loan with the warmth of a man doing a neighborly thing. He had not mentioned interest at the time. He mentioned it later. Frank Dolan has been paying that interest for 18 months. The principal is not moved. On the evening of October 11, 1954, Frank Dolan's personal vehicle, a 1949 Plymouth dark blue, was parked at the Verde Motor Court on the edge of Cottonwood. The woman at the front desk noticed it because he had parked in front of her window, and she had been looking at it all evening. She noticed 2 other men come and go from the room Frank entered. She did not think much of it at the time. She thought about it the next morning when the bank was robbed. October 12, 1954. Ray Decker left the Harmon Ranch at 8 in the morning and drove into Cottonwood to deposit his September wages at the First Territorial Bank. He parked on Main Street, walked in, filled out a deposit slip for $48, and waited at the teller window. The teller was a woman named Doris Fitch. She had his account number memorized. While he waited, Ray noticed something. A man behind the teller line near the back office door. Not a customer, but moving like someone who did not work there. Moving with the particular carefulness of someone who is counting something in his head. Ray looked at him for 2 or 3 seconds. The man turned away. Ray completed his deposit and walked out into the October morning. He drove back to the Harmon Ranch. He and Ed Harmon spent the morning repairing a stretch of fence on the north boundary, 6 miles east of town. They worked from 8 until noon. Ed's wife Clara brought them sandwiches at 12:30. Ray ate his sitting on the hood of Ed's truck, looking at the Verde Valley, thinking about the 40 acres. At 11:40, the First Territorial Bank of Cottonwood was robbed. 2 men, masks, handguns. $2,200 from the teller drawer. 4 minutes, door to door. Doris Fitch kept her hands up until the door closed. Then she called the sheriff. Deputy Frank Dolan was the first officer on the scene. And I'm telling you, this actually happened. Sheriff Dale Pruitt arrived 11 minutes later. Frank had already taken 3 witness statements. The witnesses described a young man in a denim jacket leaving the bank at approximately 9:30 that morning. Frank had a 4th statement from a customer who said the man had been nervous, jumpy, like he was casing the place. The customer's name was on the statement in Frank's handwriting. The customer did not exist. By 1 o'clock, Ray Decker was in the holding cell. The cell is 8 feet by 6 feet. There is no bench. The floor is concrete, and the concrete is cold. Not the cold of a fall morning, but the cold of something that has never been warm. The cold that comes up through the soles of your boots and moves into the bone. Ray sat against the wall with his left leg extended, because the shrapnel in his thigh does not like cold, and it has a way of making its feelings known. He had been in colder places. In November of 1950, the temperature at Chosin was 30 below zero, and the ground was frozen so hard that the entrenching tools broke against it. The men slept in their clothes and still woke up with their boots frozen to their feet. The weapons froze. The sea rations froze solid, and a man learned to sleep with them against his chest to have something to eat in the morning. Bobby Carruthers used to say that Korea was God's way of making sure American boys appreciated home. He said it every morning while his teeth were chattering, and it was funny every time because Bobby could make anything funny, which was a talent Ray had never had and spent 2 years envying. Bobby was easy with people in a way Ray was not. He could walk into a room full of strangers and leave with 3 friends. What Ray could do was fix things and work long hours and keep his word, which Bobby said was worth more anyway. Bobby would have known what to say right now. Bobby always knew what to say. Ray looked at the ceiling of the holding cell. He looked at his hands. He thought about the 40 acres and what Walt Puit's face had looked like the second time he came with an offer. That smile that did not reach the eyes, that handshake that was not a greeting. He thought about Ed Harmon, Ed who had hired him on a Thursday afternoon after a 3-minute conversation. Ed who had never once asked about Chosin or Bobby or the shrapnel in his leg. Ed who was going to hear about this arrest and not know what to think. That was the part that sat heaviest. Not the accusation, not the concrete floor. Ed Harmon's face when he heard. At 2 o'clock, Ed came to the jail. Frank Dolan told him Ray was being held for questioning and could not have visitors. Ed stood at the front desk for a long moment looking at Frank Dolan the way a man looks at something that does not add up. He drove back to the ranch. On Main Street, the crowd outside the jail had been there since noon. It had thinned a little, but not much. People in small towns do not leave when something is happening. They wait, because waiting together is the thing to do, and because the alternative is going home and not knowing. In the station wagon at the curb, the man with the 100 westerns had not moved. He had heard from the edge of the crowd the thing that kept him in the car. A woman in a print dress had said it to the man beside her, not loudly, just a statement of fact in the way of small-town women who know everything about everyone. Korea boy, chosen survivor, comes home from all that and ends up in Dale Pruitt's jail. The man in the station wagon had not gone to Korea. He had wanted to. In 1950, he had made calls, talked to people, tried to find a way. It had not worked out. He had gone on making westerns while other men went to the chosen reservoir. This was not something he talked about, but it was something he knew about himself, the way you know about the things you did not do. He got out of the car. Where are you watching from? Drop your state in the comments. I want to see how far this story reaches. He did not go to the jail first. He drove 6 miles east on the Verde River Road to the Harmon Ranch. Ed Harmon was at the barn. The man got out of the station wagon and asked Ed one question. Tell me about this morning. Ed told him. Every detail, in order, without embellishment. The fence work, the time they started, the time Clara brought sandwiches, the fact that Ray had been 6 miles east of that bank at 11:40, and Ed could put his name on a Bible and say so. Then Ed said something else. He said, Frank Dolan came out here this morning, before the robbery, around 10 o'clock. Said he was checking on something in the area. I didn't think much of it at the time. The man looked at him. Frank Dolan was here at 10. Ed nodded. In his county truck. The robbery was at 11:40. The man got back in the station wagon and drove to the Verde Motor Court on the edge of town. The woman at the front desk was still irritated about the unpaid bill from the previous night. 2 men, room 6, left before 6 in the morning without settling up. She had the license plate number because the car had been parked in front of her window all night, and she had made a note of it out of habit. The man asked her to describe the car. She described a 1949 Plymouth, dark blue. He asked her to describe the third man, the one she had seen come and go from the room. She described him. Medium height, brown hair, a badge visible on his belt when his jacket opened. The man thanked her. He wrote 2 things on a piece of notepaper from the front desk. A license plate number and a physical description. Then he wrote a name. He drove to the Verde Motor Court on the edge of town. The woman at the front desk was still irritated about the unpaid bill from the previous night. 2 men, room 6, left before 6 in the morning without settling up. She had been telling this to anyone who would listen since 7 that morning. She had the license plate number because the car had been parked directly in front of her window all night, blocking her view of the street, and she had made note of it out of the particular irritation of a woman who runs a tight operation and does not appreciate people who do not respect it. The man asked her to describe the car. She described a 1949 Plymouth, dark blue, a small dent on the rear driver's side quarter panel. He asked about the third man. She had mentioned a third man to the deputy who came by that morning. Had the deputy followed up on that? She said the deputy had written it down and moved on very quickly. The man asked her to describe the third man again. She was precise about it. Medium height, brown hair going gray at the temples, a badge visible on his belt when his jacket opened as he reached into his pocket. She had noticed the badge because she had thought for a moment he might be there officially, and then he had gone into the room and closed the door and she had decided he was not there officially. The man thanked her. He wrote two things on a piece of notepaper from the front desk, the license plate number and the physical description. Then below the description he wrote a name. He looked at the name for a moment. Then he drove back to Main Street. Sheriff Dale Pruitt is 53 years old and has run this county for 9 years. He is not a dishonest man. He is a man who trusted the wrong deputy and moved too fast because the county commissioner had been in his office at noon asking about progress. He looked up when the door opened. He recognized the face. His expression went through several adjustments. The man sat down across from Pruitt's desk without being asked. He placed his hat on the corner of the desk. He placed the notepaper beside it. He said, "Your deputy was at the Verde Motor Court last night with 2 men. He was at the Harmon Ranch this morning at 10 o'clock, an hour and 40 minutes before the robbery. The car those 2 men drove is registered to a rental company in Prescott." He paused. "The license plate is on that paper. So is a description your motor court lady will put her name to." Pruitt looked at the paper. He said, "You're telling me Frank Dolan set this boy up?" The man looked at him steadily. "I'm telling you what a woman at the motor court saw, and what Ed Harmon saw, and what the timeline says." He paused. "Ray Decker was at a fence line 6 miles east of that bank when it was robbed. Ed Harmon will swear to it." He looked at Pruitt. "That boy went to Korea when his country called him. He came back." He paused. "The least his country can do is not hang him for something Walt Puit needed done." Pruitt went very still. He said the name again quietly, as if testing it. Walt Puit. He looked at his desk. He looked at the window. He looked at something in the middle distance that was not in the room. The man across from him could see the arithmetic happening. Frank Dolan's hasty witness statement. The too convenient complaint from a customer who had left no name. The arrest made before Ed Harmon had been contacted, before the timeline had been checked, before any of the things a careful man would do had been done. Pruitt was a careful man who had not been careful this time. He said, "I should have called Harmon this morning." The man looked at him. "Yes," he said, "you should have." Pruitt was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "If I'm wrong about Frank—" "You're not wrong about Frank," the man said. He looked at the notepaper. "The motor court lady will describe him to your face." She described his badge. Pruitt looked at the paper one more time. He picked up the telephone. He made 2 calls. You can't make a man like that up. He made 2 calls. The first was to the Arizona Highway Patrol. The second was to the Yavapai County Sheriff's Substation in Prescott, where he asked for the duty supervisor and spoke for 4 minutes in a voice too low for the room to hear. He put the phone down. He sat for a moment. Then he stood up, took the key from the hook beside his desk, and walked to the holding cell. Ray Decker looked up from the floor. He had been sitting against the wall for 4 hours with his left leg extended and his back straight, the way a man sits when he has decided not to give the walls the satisfaction of seeing him slump. His face showed nothing. He had been keeping his face that way since they put him in. Pruitt unlocked the door. He said, "You're free to go." He did not say anything else. He was not yet ready to say the other things, and Ray could see this and did not push. Ray stood up. He put his weight on his right leg first, then the left. The shrapnel leg, the chosen leg, the leg that always took a moment in the cold. He straightened. The man in the canvas jacket was standing in the office doorway. Ray looked at him. He did not place the face immediately. He was 28 years old and had been on a concrete floor for 4 hours, and his leg ached and he was tired in a way that went deeper than the afternoon. The man looked back at him. His expression was the expression of a man who has seen what he came to see. "Ed Harmon's outside," the man said. "He'll drive you back." Ray nodded. He started for the door. He stopped. He turned. "Mister," his voice was quiet. "Why'd you stop?" The man picked up his hat from the corner of Pruitt's desk. He looked at Ray. "I heard a chosen survivor was in trouble," he said. He put on his hat. Seemed like the wrong kind of trouble to drive past. He walked out. Ray Decker stood in the doorway of the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office and watched him cross Main Street to the station wagon. He watched until the wagon pulled away and turned south on the highway. Then Ed Harmon put a hand on his shoulder and said, "Let's go home." Ray said, "Yes, sir." They got in Ed's truck and drove east toward the ranch. Frank Dolan was taken into custody that evening. He gave a full statement the following morning. Walt Puit was arrested 2 days later. The charges included conspiracy, fraud, and accessory to robbery. Pruitt's Phoenix Bank called in his loans within the week. The Verde Valley Land and Cattle Company did not survive the spring. Ray Decker kept his 40 acres. He found out who the man was that evening from Clara Harmon, who had heard from the woman at the motor court, who had recognized the station wagon when he drove away, and had been telling everyone since 3 o'clock. Clara told Ray at supper. Ray set down his fork. He sat with it for a long moment. He looked at his hands on the table. He picked his fork back up. "That's the part that gets me every time." Ed Harmon never said anything about that afternoon to Ray directly. He did not need to. The next morning he came to Ray's bunk before sunrise and said, "I'm putting your name on the north pasture gate. You've earned it." Ray looked at him. Ed was already walking back to the barn. Ray worked the Harmon Ranch for 4 more years. In the spring of 1958, he built a cabin on the 40 acres. Built it himself, board by board, the way his father had built the first one. He moved in on a Saturday in April. He stood on the porch that first evening and looked at the Verde Valley in the late light, and thought about his father's hands and Bobby Carruthers, and the frozen ground at Chosen, and the things that get taken from a man, and the things that do not. He married a woman named Margaret from Clarkdale in 1961. They raised 2 sons on that land. The land is still in the family. In the fall of 1958, Ray drove to Cottonwood and went to the courthouse. He asked the clerk for the record of the criminal proceedings against Frank Dolan and Walter Puit. He sat at the clerk's table and read through the file. At the back of the file, attached by a paperclip, was a copy of the notepaper the man had placed on Dale Pruitt's desk, the license plate number, the physical description, and the name Walt Puit written in plain block letters. The clerk said Ray could not keep the original. Ray asked if he could have a copy. The clerk made him a copy on the county's carbon paper. Ray kept it in the drawer of the kitchen table in the cabin on the 40 acres for 40 years. When he died in 1998, his son found it there, folded once, the carbon faint but legible. He unfolded it and read it and held it for a long time. The copy is in a frame on the wall of the ranch house now, beside the window that looks out over the 40 acres. Next to it is a photograph, Ray and Ed Harmon at the North Pasture Gate, 1958, the gate with Ray's name on it. Both men looking at the camera, neither of them smiling the way people smile for photographs, smiling the way people smile when something is real. The afternoon light comes through that window every day and crosses both frames. It stays for a while, then it moves on. Outside, the Verde Valley runs east toward the canyon walls, the same valley Ray's father homesteaded in 1921, and Ray defended in 1958 without firing a single shot. The 40 acres are still there. They always were. If this story reached you, do me a favor. Pass it on. Share it with a veteran in your life. There are more stories coming.